Hello.
Hey,
Here we go again. This is Biweeklycasts. Biweeklycasts. It's one of Biweeklycasts. The host is still the same. I'm Dima, engineer at Meta.
I'm Slava, CEO at Sevi.
And recently we talked a little bit about leadership and how it's different or not too different, or how it's connected to management. And when working on that episode, like preparing it for publishing, I figured that some of the thoughts or some of the ideas or some of the pushbacks I offered there maybe were a little bit unfair, because I was thinking about one particular aspect of management, whereas like some of the things you mentioned, including the coaching style management, I believe are more relevant to some other parts of the management profession. So I thought it would be useful or interesting, or maybe both, to chat a little bit about what it is that constitutes the job of a manager, and see how multifaceted this thing is and what are the implications of the thing.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's give it a try. I think it was in Aspen where we read a text, what's the difference between a manager and a leader? And the short answer is nobody knows. But maybe today we can find out.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I can sympathize with the answer nobody knows, because I think one of the aspects why that is it's kind of complicated or complex. There are so many things that constitute management and that constitute leadership. So it's very difficult to actually define what it is and what it isn't, especially when we want to pass some sort of a assessment or judgment whether it's a good or bad thing that's going on.
Before we jump in, is there any other motivation except for the fact that we discussed leadership previously?
No. Why? No, I think I was. I think that the genesis there was I was reading a little bit and thinking about coaching style management, and you may remember, and maybe listeners can recall, that I was a little bit harsh and dismissive about this whole concept. And later on, like, not to say turned around, but I thought, like, well, there is a time and place for this thing. It may not be. Well, I'd use stronger language. I'd say, like, this is not good thing for some aspects of managers' job, but for some others, like, why not?
There is always at least one listener we can always rely on that will not only listen carefully, but also change minds and research deeper. And that's you.
Well, that's very kind of you for saying that. I'm not sure if we need. Well, we probably need, but I'm not sure about which specifically definitions we need for this discussion. In the management, when we were contrasting management with leadership, we had some sort of definitions where we said that management is about kind of organizing and making sure that sort of things happen towards the goal, and leadership being able offer a vision and influence people and rally to have them rally behind that kind of thing. I was trying to find some sort of a definition that would be helpful for understanding the job or kind of the entirety of things that managers do. I'm not sure I was too successful at finding those definitions. Like, what I found is that PMI, the Project Management Institute, says management is a process of leading a team to achieve goals within given constraints. Well, this, right? It's not super helpful to understand what it is that a manager of a team actually does, but I guess it is what it is. What do you think?
I think that most definitions I've heard are somewhere around a manager is a person who does stuff to achieve something. And
But that's a deep insight, right? It does stuff to achieve something. The only definite word there is achieve, right?
maybe it does.
And does. Yeah, that's true. So you cannot just sit on the chair and have things happen. You have to do something. The goal is to achieve, but then there is a lot of stuff that is blurred and you need to look at each specific situation individually. One other interesting definition that I found, and I was drawn to it because of the name, it's coming from Peter Drucker, quite famous, how do we call it, theoretician, practitioner of structured management or systematic management, guru, we might say. And the definition goes: a manager is responsible for the application and performance of knowledge. I'm not too sure I understand what that means, and I was not able to find a better explanation of that thing. But yeah, there are things managers are responsible for.
Even with Peter Drucker, he had a few definitions, and that seems to me like one of the first ones, like the pre-computer times of management, and then he updated it, but I don't remember. But still, like, they all are somewhere around the manager is a person who does stuff to achieve something. So not too far.
Right. And I think looking at these definitions, we can establish that, well, managers ought to do something, right? And there are expectations for them, and the goal of their doings or activities are for the team to, by and large, achieve certain objectives that.
May I ask a concept check-in question?
Sure.
Could there be a manager without a team?
I think yes. So like when you come to an electronics store and the person comes to you and asks, like, what are you looking for? I think they call themselves sales managers, are they not?
They are, but would you call them managers? These days, people like call social media marketing manager and like people who basically manipulate with anything, but something that probably you, in my understanding of your perception of management, would name specialist or expert or practitioner or whatever.
That's a great question. I think I would probably side with that it is possible to be a manager without a team. That would be in a situation when you make things happen but not do them themselves, sort of by influencing other people, or maybe forming situational or transactional teams, whatever it might be. So you do not have a dedicated structure assigned to you. So yeah, the defining principle would be you are not delivering the results that are expected of you, sort of with your own hands.
All right, I'm fine with that.
But I think that that's a great clarification, because what I probably had in mind for this specific discussion would be a manager with the team. Because I think the way I, this for myself, try to understand what it is that manager does and why it's multifaceted is that I imagine a triangle of three things, like the team itself consisting of individual team members in one corner of triangle, then the manager of that specific team forming kind of a structure there, and the company to which the manager, the individual team members, and the team itself kind of belong. And then in interaction between those three elements, all of the things that, well, most of the things, let's put it this way, that manager is expected or can be expected to do kind of unfold. You look skeptical.
First, it kind of makes sense. And then it kind of doesn't.
Okay, you tell me.
I do see three roles, like the organization, a manager, and teammates.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, technically, a manager is an employee and should be in the same corner with the contributors.
Right.
Especially when, like, some contributors do manage something, and some managers do something with their own hands. So they're kind of contributors in some sort.
I agree. I agree. I think that this triangular structure is what I would probably conceptualism kind of in my mind's eye use to help me answer the question or list the jobs or things that manager might be expected to do, which can be different depending on different contexts. For example, a manager, I think, in my view, is an essential interface between the team and the company. So that at least part of their job is making sure that the team understand what it is that company needs from the team and how to best or just deliver those expectations, what those expectations are, what are the kind of guidances. So manager helps team interact with the company, and that's one of
Helps the company to interact with the team as well.
yes, exactly. It works both ways, because we would not expect company at large to interact on all of the individual, like on all the production or execution or whatever it might be related questions, to interact with each team member individually. We would expect them to be treated as a group, and manager would be kind of the first embodiment of the team for the company. There can be exceptions, but kind of more often than not, that's the case.
Generally makes sense.
So, and I think like from that place of a manager being the intermediary between the team and the company arise several things that the managers do. And again, depending on the situation and the setup and specifics of the domain where the company operates, those things might be different. But it, like we said, managers help team members understand company what it needs, and it also helps company to manage or steer the team members to do what it is that the company needs and expects from them in exchange for the salaries that those team members receive. And I think from this point of view, there is next layer where the manager, for the duty of the manager for the company is to actually make sure that the team is performing and it's doing what's expected of it, kind of to deliver business value by and large. And kind of other the way I see it, aspects of the manager's work would be kind of setting goals, prioritizing, decided what's done, what's not done, and allocation of resources, execution management, like tracking progress and maybe unblocking and helping things move forward when we need them, and also translate team performance expectations into more individual and specific performance expectations for individual team members, and make sure that they contribute at least as much as is expected from them. And that's another sort of aspect of manager's job.
Just to double check, are you trying to describe an average manager or like a full list of jobs as much as possible that a manager could?
That is a great question. I think what I'm trying to describe is potential full list of things that manager might do, being fully cognizant of the fact that in different situations, in different setups, in different lines of business, the proportion of those things can be very different, and emphasis can be on one thing versus the other thing. Do you see a problem with this?
No, I think it's fine. Could I add a job to your list here?
Sure, please.
I think that one of the core things before the manager comes to all those things you listed is to understand the system a manager works in. And to understand the rules, the culture, the principles, the value chain, and then do all the stuff like being interface, communicating, unblocking, prioritizing, and everything. But I think that we quite often, I don't know, underestimate or don't pay enough attention to the, is it systems thinking or like the ability to grasp the complex thing? And
I think we call it systems thinking.
so I would say that would be the pre-job before one actually comes to execute something or work as a mediator.
That is, would it be fair to say that what you're suggesting is that first and foremost, managers should understand the place and meaning, for the lack of a better word, of what it is that kind of team brings in the bigger picture, in the bigger machinery of the company, and maybe even beyond that, depending on the situation.
I would probably use not the term machinery. I would say the nature of the company. I think it's a bit more fluid and less. It's not just the structure, but it's also how things are done, which is not necessarily the machinery. It could be the habits, the rituals, norms, the conflicts, the atmosphere, and all the other things that the oil and the grease of the machinery as well.
Right. Probably I was almost waiting for you to say the word values of the company and kind of company ethos and like that ephemeral culture that we refer to every here and then. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And like one of the jobs that I listed here in relation to culture is that team, in my opinion, is the first kind of element of first unit which within the company can carry culture, because individual would probably carry their individual culture shaped by their past experiences, which may or may not be related and aligned with how company want things to be done. And team is the unit where those things can start happening, where through peer pressure and manager pressure things can be done in a particular way. And I think it's also one of the manager's job is to cultivate and like either build or evolve or develop that culture for the team based on what the company needs.
All right, that also makes a lot of sense.
Anything I'm missing from kind of big picture kinds of work that manager is generally expected to do?
I think a bit lower in the notes, you were also trying to categorize the managers and to think that this is where this division actually matters, like what kind of job you're missing. Because I think that for top managers, there is another layer that we haven't discussed yet, which for middle managers is not there yet. And I would say that an average manager is probably focusing on things you mentioned.
Yeah, and I think like the next several other dimensions I wanted to introduce that, like you say this, the average manager, it probably works, but then average manager is like a spherical cow in the vacuum, right? So it's easy to reason about it, but like how useful that reasoning is remains to be seen. And in practical situations, it's difficult to just stay at general principles or ideas or best practices or recommendations for management. You probably want something better and something more specific, but then giving something better, something more specific is difficult without really understanding the specifics of a setup within the company, what it is that the company is doing, what are the market conditions, what's the actual composition of the team, who are the individuals, and what we are trying to achieve, and so on and so forth. A gazillion of different factors. And one of those that you suggested is that managers can operate at different levels in the company hierarchy, which also make their job a little bit, gives their job a little bit of a different flavor, right? The line manager who manages the individual contributors who do actually things with their hands, create value, is one kind of a job where you sort of manage people who do things that you are not necessarily a great expert in. You may be, but that's generally not expected and may not be the situation. But you can be a middle manager where you are probably closer to people who you manage because you manage other managers, and then you can be high there as an executive manager managing either other executive managers or managers where the kind of work that you're doing is different yet again. And you being an executive manager in your company, how would you characterize your job or day-to-day responsibilities being different from the days of what you can remember about you being a more of a line manager or middle manager? If there were those days, maybe you were
I think I'm
already
not the
CEO.
best example because I'm also a founder and the CEO, and like I have multiple roles here. But I would say that answering your question, probably not about me, but about some executive managers I know, I would say that their job is to connect the strategy with day-to-day life, like to get this vision, ambition, goals, and translate it into the language of executive execution. So what they execute is may be or may not be their job. Like it could be an advisory board, the founder, someone else who decides what has to be done. But finding the proper way to do that, how it has to be done, is solemnly executive manager's job.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even though we call all of those people, we call them managers, and what we expect them, like generally expect them to be doing is manage. That management is quite different in those different situations. And I also thought that there's also a difference in environments and the kind of teams that we are dealing with. There can be a team that, like I don't know, like in software company, general regular team is expected to every now and then get junior engineers coming on board who need to be onboarded and their growth need to be managed. And what manager does on that team would be different from a different kind of team where there is a, I don't know, like SWAT team that focuses on like high priority, high severity kind of issues, or managing critical systems where it is an expectation that kind of people who join that team are kind of more experienced and more senior, and the expectations to them are different, and the job of a manager on those teams is different as well.
Do you think there is a specific difficulty or challenge for people to transition from one level of management to another? Like something that made you a very successful middle manager then prevents you from doing a good job at executive management?
I think it can be. I think it's maybe there can be parallels drawn to being engineers as well, where going up, let's say, management hierarchy, you need to be more, not only to say, it sounds like as if you are missing something, but you need to be more comfortable with, let's say, ambiguity and less directedness in causes and effects that you observe and try to affect in the team. You need to be, you need to grow comfort in understanding that you cannot turn the big ship on a dime. You need to be persistent. You make a decision now, and then you wait like for not wait. You do something for 2-3 months, and then you see the effect of this change in course. Whereas when on the lower levels, kind of more closer to the ground or to the metal, it's often a lot more possible to see results of the managerial actions faster than at that level. So if I guess if you're too attached, like if you're an engineer who likes to tinker with the code and stuff like that, it might be difficult to go higher. It's not to say difficult to go higher, because higher up, that would not be the expectation for you to tinker with the code, or it would not be the main expectation. Whereas lower, closer to the metal, it might be.
We just got partially through your notes and the time is kind of running out. So if you were to highlight the key things that you haven't mentioned yet, what would be the jobs of the manager that we haven't named yet?
We haven't. Well, I think one we kind of mentioned. I kind of mentioned building team culture, kind of cultivating team culture. I think that's a unique job of a manager that, by and large, only them can do, because that only for them it's more or less is a direct expectation, is to create, to grow and develop team as a unit. It might sound a little bit pathetic, but to get into that 1+1=3 situation where you see like the strengths and the relative weaknesses or kind of blind spots of different team members, and organize their work such that they can complement one another and together do more than they would be able to do otherwise. And I think this is one of the things that I would only managers can do, and it also, I think, is sad when they are not doing that, because some other things they can delegate to other team members. This is something that is almost impossible to delegate, and if managers don't spend time doing it, it's not great, I guess.
I would say that there is a sub job to what you mentioned previously as being an interface. It's the knowledge sharing, the ability to transfer knowledge from a team to a team. Hi, Peter Drucker with his definition. But I think it is kind of important. And one thing that we haven't probably mentioned, and I would like to refer us to our previous episode about the business processes, it's an ability to reflect on how things are done and change them if needed, like the optimization of the flow, not just communicating how things work, but also understanding whether they work in the proper way, and if they don't, then changing the way.
Yep, totally. Like to see the bigger picture.
Would you support the idea that managers should also do the mental support, empathy, and all the human touch, like to be humane center?
Maybe, but not fully. I think I think it comes.
Like, sorry, it's Tuesday. Like, it's not the empathy day. Like, please come on Monday or Wednesday.
I think there is a place for a little bit of that element, but I guess I would not expect managers to become a go-to therapist for their team members. But at the same time, I would not also expect them to say like, no, like that I have nothing to do with it. You go see a doctor for the lack of a better word. Because by and large, like depending on this, like It's so very much depends on individual situation and like what the team is about and what they're trying to do, what the culture is, and so on and so forth. But by and large, I would still expect managers to do what is best for the team. I know it's difficult to define like what it is that is best for the team. It depends on so many different parameters, and in some situations, the best thing for the team is to be a little bit of a support for a team member. But then maybe when the situation gets more serious or more involved, to also transfer or redirect that request for support to someone who is better equipped to provide that kind of support.
So shall we try lending it to a thought experiment?
Yeah, I think the only one I had is what we started with, is the coaching style management, right? Where I was saying like, no,
I could see
like
that comment, yeah.
how come people are doing this? And I said like, well, maybe not, because I think if you look at the in the triangle, manager, specific manager, team, individual, collab, how do we call it? Collaboration is not the right word. Interfacing is too technical. What's the word
Interact?
I'm looking for? Sorry, you didn't get it?
Was it interact?
Yes, exactly. In interactions, there I think is place and time for the coaching style management, right? Because then it gives, probably more than other methods, it can give more freedom to an individual. And if you are working with more mature and experienced team member, this can be quite helpful. And I would not at all be against this. I would probably be a little bit more cautious with, say, less experienced junior team members, where I think might be better to maybe be more direct, less coaching, and then transition to coaching. But then I don't see how that can work in other facets of managers' job. Like if they are interfacing, if they are to transfer the information from and the knowledge from the rest of the company to the team, like how would you, like, I guess you can imagine a way of doing this in a coaching style management, but as a teammate, I don't think there is anything more frustrating than trying to guess what it is that leadership wants from you. Like, can you just tell me so that we can work together against this problem, as opposed to me working against you, trying to figure out what it is that you're trying to say?
I would say that coaching approach would work with three preconditions. One you've probably mentioned already, it's the competency. Like, people should have the skills, maybe not the experience, but the capacity to resolve the issue. The second is the motivation. Like, you apply coaching somewhere where a person actually wants to do something. And the third one would be trust. You probably don't want to apply it to someone you don't trust or someone who doesn't trust you. But if there is a certain level of competency, a motivation on the employee side to resolve the issue, and a certain level of trust, then coaching seems like quite a good tool to do the job.
Would you limit this to kind of almost one-on-one interactions, manager with individual, or would you also see a possibility to extend this to, let's say, manager to the whole of the team interactions?
It could be done in teams. I think that in some styles of facilitation, strategic sessions are kind of that way. You invite an external facilitator who asks you a set of questions, and you basically shape your strategy not really relying on what the facilitator has to say. You do it by yourselves from what you have inside.
But then still it feels to me that this is limited to specific activity or specific thing that we are trying to achieve this way. I would not necessarily expect this to be kind of day-to-day.
Let me give you an example of retrospective. Like a manager comes to the competent team that knows that there is an issue and wants to solve it, gives the space and the room for them to talk. They share their thoughts and opinions. The manager asks clarification questions, asks them where they would like to start, like what kind of support do they need, and lets them go. That's basically the team coaching approach. You ask them what their goal is. You ask what are the actions that they're going to take, and let them be.
This is fair. I think maybe a little bit of my skepticism comes from the fact that what you describe, I kind of definitely can see and agree. I think I've done similar things myself, so I would not have a word against that. But I would, in my mind, I would file this more under facilitation of retrospectives rather than management. So like I'm playing a role of facilitator in that situation.
Facilitation can be done differently. You can be more dominant. You can have your opinions. You can basically prioritize things for the team. Or you may not. And I think that's what makes the difference. Like the retrospective is the number of questions that people should answer, but who actually makes the decision? The manager or the team?
I think there might be a room for some more follow-ups about this specific thing, but I see what you're saying. Maybe kind of when I think of management, I have something that is more of a regularly consistent behavior, but rather than kind of a specific style of doing one specific activity. But then where is the line between the two? I guess that kind of illustrates how, not to say difficult, but complex the space is, depending on how you approach things. What are the inputs, and like even here, if we are doing this specific kind of question with the session, with this specific setup of a team, with this specific goal in mind, we might do it in one particular way, or we might do it in a different way and call it different things.
True. So what would be your main takeaway from this conversation?
I think a message, well, takeaway as it often comes out of the discussions we have, kind of being specific helps, and sometimes you might be surprised by, like we just were, well, at least I was just surprised by drawing the difference between the management and facilitation of specific sessions. And one other thing I would add to that is that some things are kind of complex, especially when we try to do them practically, and it makes a lot of sense to pay attention to those details and not think about how we do that with an average manager, like what is the specific situation we are dealing with, and what is applicable and what is not applicable for that specific situation. And from
my takeaway will be a bit shorter.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a question to myself to consider whether I'm the interface my company needs these days. Like, am I the best tool to communicate with the teams? Or maybe there is a better way to do that.
That's a deep question.
I think it's just spring, I usually get stuck in some kind of crisis in the autumn, and then in spring I get into the philosophy kind of mood.
I think I only hope that you mentioning that it's spring is not a pun at how irregular our episodes are, because I think everything around me suggests it's kind of January. It's a little bit early for spring, but
It's coming.
it's coming for sure. Okay, so then while we are waiting for spring to come, wish everyone good
Together
weeks.
with this episode.
At any rate, good weeks.
Good weeks.